I remember exactly where I was when it happened, or at least when it started for me. Not the cosmic thing floating up there, no, but the other thing, the quiet hum that began to seep into everything. I was just Evelyn then, Dr. Evelyn Reed, a neurologist, which meant I dealt with brains, with what made people tick, and maybe more importantly, what made them stop ticking right. My world was logical, built on data, charts, and the predictable madness of the human mind. Things that could be observed, measured, reasoned with. The news had been buzzing for weeks, of course. That object, a colossal, silent presence, hanging there, casting its impossibly vast shadow over most of the eastern seaboard. They called it, mostly, the anomaly. NASA, the Department of Defense, they all had their theories, their press conferences, but no answers. Only assurances that it was not a collision risk. Like that was the only danger we should be worried about anyway. I mean, sure, it wasn't going to crash, but it was just there, a silent leviathan in the sky, watching. I remember, honestly, thinking it was just a giant, really expensive art installation from some alien culture, maybe, or a very elaborate hoax. My mind, it always went to the simplest, most rational explanation. That's just how I was built. It was a Monday morning, like any other, or so I kept telling myself. My office at the hospital, up in the Northeast, the one with the view of gray brick buildings and a small, struggling maple tree. Everything was precise, just how I liked it. My appointments scheduled, my notes neatly stacked. There was this fountain pen, you know, a gift from my sister Sarah. Always sat there, right on top of the current patient's folder. Green marble, a good, hefty feel to it. Only that morning, it wasn't there. I remember looking down, and it was on the floor, tucked right up against the leg of my swivel chair, just rolled there. I picked it up, dusted it off. Must have knocked it off, I guess, I mumbled. An unconscious gesture, I suppose, because I wasn't even thinking about it. No, my mind was already on Mrs. Sullivan, a new patient with a stubborn case of insomnia and the strange, fractured nightmares she kept describing. Horrible things, she'd said, things about a vast darkness, deeper than any ocean, and sounds she couldn't quite place. I had dismissed it, of course, as a symptom of her anxiety, perhaps some latent trauma resurfacing under the stress of, well, that thing in the sky. Collective anxiety, that's what it was, has to be. I clipped the pen back to my blouse, a little ritual, a minor irritant, nothing more. The thing is, Mrs. Sullivan wasn't alone. I started noticing an uptick in these kinds of cases. Not just insomnia, but these vivid, almost shared dreams. Patients from all walks of life, describing things that echoed each other. A cold, crushing darkness, geometric shapes that twisted the eye, and always, always that feeling of something calling. Not a voice, not exactly, but a deep, resonant pull. I started making correlations, marking down the key words from their therapy sessions. It was fascinating, honestly, from a neurological perspective. A mass hallucination, perhaps? Or maybe something about that thing up there was affecting our collective unconscious, like a giant passive-aggressive mood ring. A shared delusion, certainly. The brain, after all, is a fragile thing. But then Sarah called. Her voice, usually so bright, so full of artistic whimsy, was frayed, tight. I remember the static on my cell, making her sound even more distant, more panicked. "Evelyn," she almost gasped. "Sis, I had this dream. It was unbelievable. A bottomless pit, infinite, and this smell, Ev. God, this stench, like something from the deepest part of the ocean, but rotten, something ancient, dead, and alive." I tried to be practical, of course. "Sarah, honey, you're an artist. Your subconscious is probably just working overtime. All the news, the stress about, that thing, it's affecting everyone." I sounded clinical, I know. It's how I cope. It's what I do.
She just kept repeating the smell, the pit, over and over. And I told her to breathe, to try to relax, to paint the good things. She was quiet for a long time. Then she just said, "I think I felt it, Ev. It felt so real." That night, when I got back to my apartment, a blast of cold air hit me the moment I twisted the doorknob. Odd, I thought.
My place was always warm, cozy, smelled faintly of the jasmine candles I like to burn. But this was different. The air was heavy, damp, like something had just crawled out of a swamp. And there it was, that smell. Pungent, sharp, utterly alien. Exactly as Sarah had described. A rotting, marine odor. Something that shouldn't belong in a city apartment 12 floors up. It clung to the air, to my clothes, like a physical presence. I shivered, pulling my coat tighter. "Just the drain," I muttered. "Probably something caught in the old pipes." I walked to the window, the one overlooking the street, and yanked it shut. But the cold, the dampness, it still clung to me. On my tongue, a clammy, almost slimy aftertaste, like I'd just inhaled something I shouldn't have. I tried breathing deep, to clear my head, to get rid of it, but the air felt thick, like it had weight, pressing down on my lungs, making each breath feel like an effort. It wasn't a comfortable feeling, not at all. Days bled into a week. Sarah stopped answering her phone. That wasn't like her, not Sarah. She always picked up, even if it was just to complain about her latest artistic block or a bad date. I started to worry, the kind of worry that tightens your chest and makes your stomach clench. I drove to her apartment, just a short drive across town. The door was unlocked, which sent a fresh wave of panic through me. Sarah was meticulous about locking up. Everything about that apartment, usually so full of vibrant colors and half-finished canvases, felt wrong. It was quiet, too quiet. No music playing, no rustle of her working. I looked around, my gaze falling on her work table. There were her paints, her brushes, all laid out. But instead of her usual landscape or portrait sketches, there was a single, open sketchbook. My heart was pounding now, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. I walked over, my feet feeling heavy, like wading through thick mud. The pages, God, the pages. They were filled, not with the whimsical, bright art I knew, but with dozens, hundreds of spirals. Obsessively drawn, swirling, intricate. Some were impossibly geometric, twisting inwards and outwards in ways that made my eyes hurt, defying any sense of perspective or dimension. And then there were these, symbols. Not letters, not hieroglyphs, just bizarre, squiggly lines that looked like something an alien machine would etch. No language I knew, just things. I felt a coldness creep up my spine, a chill that had nothing to do with the apartment's temperature. My fingers trembled as I turned a page. Another spiral, even more grotesque, more hypnotic. My eyes fixed on one particularly nasty symbol, a jagged, almost insect-like scrawl amidst the curves. And that's when it happened. My phone. It was face down on the table, just beside the sketchbook. It suddenly, without warning, flashed. The screen, normally dark, flickered to life. A blinding white flash, then a rapid succession of static, like an old television set struggling for signal. And amidst the snow-like chaos, a blurred, shifting image. It was that thing, the colossal object in the sky. Distorted, shimmering, like looking at an image through rippling water, but unmistakably it. I screamed, not a loud scream, just a choked, terrified gasp. I threw the sketchbook down, my hands slick with sweat. It clattered to the floor, pages splaying open, the grotesque symbols staring up at the ceiling.
The instant it hit the ground, the static on my phone vanished. The screen went dark, the flash ceased. Silence descended again, thick and heavy, like a suffocating blanket. I just stood there, my breath catching in my throat. My eyes were darting between the dark telephone and the open sketchbook on the floor, my mind struggling, failing to process what I had seen. "No, this can't be real," I whispered. This isn't happening." My phone, it was just a glitch. Yeah, a glitch. She's just gone. Stress, that's all. I tried to believe it. I really did. My gaze drifted back to the sketchbook. It lay open to a page, and now I saw it. A small, folded piece of paper tucked into the spine. My hand was still shaking as I bent down, picking it up. It was Sarah's handwriting, scrawled in her hasty, familiar script. Just one line. "They're calling me, sister. I have to go." My blood ran cold. My head snapped back up, looking around Sarah's apartment, suddenly feeling incredibly small, incredibly watched.
Then I looked down, again, at the floor where the sketch pad had fallen. There, on the polished wood beneath it, was a mark. Not a scrape from the fall, no. This was a stain. Dark, almost black, and slightly reflective, like old dried ink. But it wasn't ink. Inside the dark sheen, there were these tiny, writhing veins, like a network of capillaries, undulating faintly. It was organic, but not like anything I had ever seen. It reflected the dim light from the window in a way that made my stomach churn. And as I watched, my eyes wide, it seemed to grow. Imperceptibly, slowly, a tendril of dark slickness spreading, inch by agonizing inch, into the grain of the wood. Like it was alive, like it was feeding. A wave of nausea hit me, strong and sudden. This wasn't a glitch, this wasn't stress, this wasn't rational. I dropped to my knees, shaking, my hands fumbling for the sleeve of my blouse, then remembered the pen. I took it off, trying to apply some pressure with the cloth to the growing stain. Tried to wipe it. It was stupid, I know, but I had to do something, anything. I rubbed at it hard, scrubbing with all my might, using a bit of water from a discarded paint cup on the table. Then some soap I found under the sink. It wouldn't budge, nothing. If anything, the water seemed to make it worse, helping it sink deeper, dissolving into the wood, becoming a permanent, ghastly part of Sarah's floor. My skin crawled. A deep revulsion filled me, a feeling of uncleanliness that seeped into my bones. My head snapped up again, the phone. It was on the table where I had left it, dark, silent. Only it wasn't. It suddenly, violently turned on again. No flash this time, just the screen. And a sound. A low, deep rumble, vibrating from the phone itself, but also, somehow, from inside my head. It felt like a resonance, a deep, guttural hum that shook the apartment, making the floorboards beneath me tremble. A dull throb, a pressure in my ears. The sound was primal, like something massive, something from the deep, was stirring. Then, on the screen, amidst the lingering static, clear as day, a single line of text appeared. Black letters on a shimmering gray background. "Welcome, Evelyn." It was the final blow. My breath hitched. My heart hammered, a frantic, desperate rhythm against my ribs, so loud I thought it would burst right out of my chest. I couldn't breathe.
The air felt thin, non-existent, like it had all been sucked out of the room, leaving me stranded in a vacuum. My entire body locked up, rigid, with a fear so profound, so absolute, it eclipsed everything I had ever thought I knew about terror. Not Sarah. No, not just Sarah. Not just some distant global phenomenon. It knew my name. It had seen me. I had been marked. I was being welcomed by something that defied every scientific principle, every logical explanation. Something that had reached out through the veil of dreams and reality and touched me directly, personally. I stood there in the growing darkness of Sarah's apartment, the pungent, alien smell still clinging to the air, making my eyes water. The phone was off again now, silent, dark. But the image of those spiraling symbols, the words, "Welcome, Evelyn," they were burned into my retinas. I blinked hard, over and over, but they remained, shimmering like a promise, a chilling invitation. A promise of invasion. A cold dread, the kind that goes bone deep, settled in my gut. I wasn't just looking for answers anymore. I wasn't trying to understand some mass delusion. I was being hunted. And that thing, the colossal object in the sky, the one the news channels kept telling us was not a collision risk, wasn't just an object. For me, it was now something alive, a vast waking thing, an organ of perception, and it was staring right at me. I remember exactly what it felt like to be hunted. Not by a person, not by an animal, but by that. By it. After leaving Sarah's apartment, after that welcome on my phone, I fled. I didn't think, didn't pack, just drove. Drove myself straight back to the hospital, to my lab, the place I thought I knew, the place of logic. I convinced myself it was the safest place, a place where I could, maybe, just maybe, make sense of what was happening, or at least stay alive long enough to try. My office wouldn't do, too exposed. So I used my clearance, bullied a security guard, probably, though I don't remember the exact words.
Just remember the look on his face, the way he just handed me keys. I settled into one of the unused isolation rooms in the research wing. Small cot, steel door, no windows. Just the humming of the climate control, the kind of sterile quiet that usually calmed me. It didn't, not then. The silence was heavy, thick almost. I spread out all the files I could get my hands on. Patient records, my own notes on sleep disorders, consciousness, pictures of that thing in the sky, official NASA reports, all the bullshit assurances. I needed light, so I reached for the small desk lamp, a cheap thing with a yellow shade, flipped the switch. The warm, usual glow filled the small space. But in the corner, just behind the lamp, the shadow, it wasn't just dark. It looked like a hole, a place where the light just stopped existing, instead of just being dimmed by something. It was wrong, fundamentally, impossibly wrong. My eyes blinked hard, once, twice. The shadow was normal again, just a shadow, black, flat against the wall. I must have been tired, beyond tired, really, exhausted. My mind playing tricks, that's what it was. Has to be. I pinched myself, a hard, sharp pain in my arm, just to make sure I was awake. It still hurt, so I was awake. Just my eyes, I mumbled, my voice rough, cracking. Oversensitive, that's all.
I tried to focus on the charts, on the neat columns of data, on anything that made sense. But that thought, that image of a sucking black hole in the light, it just twisted in my gut. It wouldn't let go. I needed to be sure, needed to feel safe. So I walked over to the room's main monitor, the one that showed the security feeds for the wing. Just a blank, empty hallway, the cameras humming softly. I saw my own reflection, a distorted figure in the glass, pale, hair disheveled. I waved my hand, a small, tentative gesture. My reflection in the monitor waved back, but it was a beat late, a tiny, almost imperceptible delay. And its eyes, in that split second of lag, they just still looked at the spot where I had been standing a half second ago, even though my body had moved. Like it was holding on to something I couldn't see there, something that had been behind me. A sudden, sharp rap came from behind me, from inside the room. A soft, single knock, not loud, not aggressive, just there. I jumped, spinning around. There was nothing. Just the cot, the small table, my clothes piled on the chair. The chair, though, it was still. But it had swiveled just a fraction of an inch to the left, just enough to be noticed. I hadn't touched it. No way. My blood felt like ice running down my spine, into my stomach. No fucking way, I breathed out, the words catching in my throat. I turned back to the monitor. My reflection was still there, but still, motionless. I reached out a hand, touching the screen. It was cold, colder than it should have been. Every other piece of equipment in the room, the computer tower, the server racks behind the door, they all hummed with a faint warmth. But the screen itself, it was slick, like wet stone. I pulled my hand back, rubbing my fingers together, trying to get rid of the feeling clinging to them. This wasn't my oversensitive eyes. This wasn't fatigue. This wasn't just a glitch. This was something else, something in here, with me. I spent the next few days holed up, barely sleeping, just working, poring over every single piece of data I had on strange sleep patterns, on the human brain's response to inexplicable stimuli. I started sketching, drawing circuits, concepts for something that, well, I didn't know what it could do. But it felt like the only thing left, a device, something that could generate a counter-frequency. My brain, the one thing I still trusted, even as it felt like it was playing games with me, told me there had to be an answer in here, some kind of frequency, sound wave, electromagnetic pulse, something to break whatever connection it was making with us. I'd catch myself sometimes, looking at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone, the one that had shown me, "Welcome, Evelyn." I'd stare, wonder if my eyes looked different, if I was already changing. I tried not to blink when my reflection blinked, just to see if I could catch it. I never did, always seemed to be perfectly in sync. But the urge to check, to know, kept coming back. A nasty little itch under my skin. Then the reports started flooding in, even to my little bunker. More.
So many more. Mass disappearances, mass gatherings, all heading towards certain focal points. And the worst ones, the ones that made my stomach clench, they centered around the city park, the one right under that thing in the sky, where its shadow fell like a cloak. And I knew, I just knew, Sarah. I couldn't stay in that room, not when Sarah was out there, tangled up in whatever fresh hell was unfolding. So I left, armed myself with my new device, still crude, but it was something. It was a small thing, mostly wires and a modified neuro interface I'd rigged up. Strapped to the side of my head, a tangle of wires that looked like something out of a bad sci-fi movie. A ridiculous, desperate hope. The city outside was a nightmare. Cars abandoned, stores looted. Not the chaos of violence, no, A different kind of chaos. An empty chaos. The streets were deserted, but I could hear it, always hear it. A low, rolling rumble, like thunder, but it wasn't from the sky. It was from everywhere. From the ground, from the buildings, from inside my own skull. I drove toward the park, following the faint sounds, the strange, echoing moans that seemed to carry on the suddenly damp air. My lungs felt heavy with each breath. It reeked, that smell, that ancient fish tank gone wrong smell. Only now, it was everywhere. It clung to the asphalt, to the abandoned cars, thick and cloying. And then I saw them. The park. It was packed, but not with families, not with people laughing or playing. It was a mass of bodies, hundreds, thousands, all facing the center, where that thing in the sky cast its impossible shadow. Its dark edges blurring the world, making the trees look like black silhouettes against a bruised purple sky. The people, their eyes were black. Just black. No whites, no pupils. Hollow. And they were building. Giant, crude structures, spirals, like the ones in Sarah's sketchbook. But these were massive, made of mud, of trash, of anything they could get their hands on. Just twisting upwards, like grotesque, organic towers. And the sounds? They were making them. A droning, guttural sound. Not words, just a sound. A unified, rhythmic moan that vibrated against my teeth. I pushed my way through the crowd, an invisible force moving them aside, though they didn't seem to notice me. They just kept moving, swaying, building. I had to find Sarah. My heart was a frantic drum, beating against my ribs, so hard I thought it might just burst. I bumped into one of the mud structures. My hand, reflexively, reached out, steadied myself against it. It felt wrong, so wrong. Soft, like cold jelly, but a searing heat shot through my palm, immediately followed by an intense, freezing chill. Both at once. My hand recoiled, as if burned, as if frozen. And in that same instant, the mud structure, it shifted, it hardened, like stone. And these lines, twisting lines, impossible geometries, spirals I'd seen in Sarah's book, they seemed to bloom across its surface, like it was breathing, etching them itself. The whole thing seemed to pulse with some kind of dark energy. A sudden, deep thrum ran through the air, shaking my bones. And then, that thing in the sky, it began to hum. Not sound, not exactly. Light. Strange, shimmering light signals pulsing from its colossal form. A ripple of energy washed over the park, and I felt it in my head. A tearing sensation, like someone was trying to rip my brain apart. Flashes, images, a bottomless pit, infinite. Geometric shapes that twisted the eye, warped, impossible. Sarah's words, my patient's words. They weren't dreams. They were this. They were it. And it was doing this, manipulating them, us. I staggered, clutching my head. My legs felt like rubber. My world, it was shifting. The ground swayed, the sky pulsed. Reality felt like a thin sheet of paper being ripped apart at the seams. And then I knew. It wasn't suicide, not in the way we understood it. This was a reshaping, a harvesting, an assimilation. That was its purpose. To swallow us whole, our minds, our consciousness, to make us part of it. Like cells in a giant alien organism.
I stumbled forward, my eyes scanning the sea of black-eyed faces. I had to find her, and then I saw her. Sarah. She was standing on one of the larger spiral structures, almost completed, closer to the center of the park. Her face was calm, too calm. Her eyes, like all the others, were black. But there was a strange, terrifying serenity about her.
She was holding something, a rope, but it wasn't rope. It was made of tendrils, plant tendrils, glowing faintly, mutated, twisted into odd shapes, mirroring the architectural curves of that thing in the sky. These plants, they had sprung up from the ground, from the cracked pavement of the park, horrible, alien growths. She turned her head, slowly. Her gaze, flat and black, fell on me. She smiled, a slow, stretching smile that was too wide, pulling back her lips too far, showing too many teeth. It wasn't Sarah's smile. It was something else, a crude imitation. And the voice that came out of her mouth, it was deep, vibrating, a low rumble, echoing like it came from a great unseen depth. Not her voice. "You see it too," the voice said, coming from Sarah. "All of us, we return, eventually." My breath hitched, my blood ran cold again. Sarah, my sister, she was gone. Not dead. Worse, she was a conduit, a puppet, a disciple, a mouthpiece for them, a piece of the Leviathan. The call hadn't just taken her sanity, it had taken her, made her into a tool. I just stood there, rooted, paralyzed by the horror. All my strength, all my resolve, just drained out of me. My hands started to tremble. Sarah, my Sarah, gone. As I stared at her, feeling completely hollowed out, my body frozen by a fear that went beyond anything I thought I could feel, a man nearby, one of the black-eyed disciples, turned his head, slowly, his eyes, devoid of light, focused on me. He didn't say anything, just slowly raised his arm. And then I felt it, a sudden, strong, invisible force. It pulled at my own arm, not my muscles doing it, not me. But my arm started to rise, trying to reach out, like I was on strings, invisible strings, puppet strings, pulling at my flesh, at my bones. I fought it. God, I fought it. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. My body, my own body, refused to obey my will. It kept pulling, inexorably, towards him, towards them, towards Sarah. It wanted me. Oh God, it wanted me. Not just to die, not just to go mad. It wanted to twist me, to use me, to make me a part of its network. This wasn't just an outside force manipulating reality. It was inside. It was going for my very will, to make me a puppet, to make me a thing, another cog in its organism. The fear that twisted in my gut wasn't the fear of death. It was the absolute terror of losing myself, of becoming that. Not Evelyn, just a thing. My mind, what was left of it, screamed. This was it. This was the moment. I squeezed my eyes shut, a tear rolling down my cheek. For Sarah, for the world. My fingers, still shaking, fumbled for the device strapped to my head. I had designed it to connect directly to my neural pathways, to channel some kind of counter-frequency.
a desperate gambit, a foolish one. But what else was there? With a choked gasp, I activated it. A searing electric current, cold and hot all at once, tore through my mind. My bones creaked, a dull, sickening grind of cartilage and bone. The world went white, a blinding white flash, and then, from that thing in the sky, a sound. A loud, piercing shriek. Not an audible sound, not really, but a sound that ripped through everything. It vibrated in my teeth, in my skull, in the very ground beneath my feet. An unearthly, primordial scream, echoing through the park, through the city. And then, just silence. A dead silence, heavy, oppressive. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, but full of pressure, full of something else. The disciples in the park, they froze, mid-movement, like statues. All of them with their black, lifeless eyes, just still, motionless. I crumpled to the ground, my body convulsing, muscles screaming. My head felt like it was splitting open. A deep, raw psychological wound ripped through me, tearing at the very fabric of my being. I had stopped it, temporarily, but the cost was everything. Myself felt like it had shattered into a million pieces. The silence wasn't a victory. It was a gaping hole, a testament to something so vast, so ancient, that human existence was nothing but a speck of dust in its cosmic orbit. I lay there, twitching, my eyes wide, staring up at the now silent, dark object in the sky. I was insignificant. We were all insignificant. The world went silent. The ritual stopped. The mass movements ceased. For now. People, some of them, came back. Most didn't.
History would call it a mass hysteria, a global mental breakdown in the face of the unknown. They rebuilt. They tried to forget. I couldn't. I survived, barely. My mind, it was never the same. I lived in a small apartment, quiet, overlooking a park that was slowly coming back to life. I saw my reflection in the mirror sometimes. There was a small spiral-shaped scar on my temple where I'd connected the device. It looked almost organic. I'd touch it, run my finger over the raised skin. It sent a faint shiver, a strange resonance through my skull. And sometimes, when I looked at my reflection, it would blink, and I'd realize, with a sickening lurch in my stomach, that my reflection's eyes had blinked a fraction of a second later than mine. Just enough to be noticed. Or sometimes I'd catch myself smiling, a slow, wide smile, too wide, just like Sarah's, too many teeth. And the thought would hit me, cold and sharp, that perhaps, in that moment, I wasn't entirely me, that some fragment, some echo had lingered. I knew. I heard it still. When I closed my eyes, when the world was truly quiet, I could still hear the whispering. Not clear commands anymore, more like a hum, a promise, a terrifying melody, waiting to be played again. Leviathan wasn't defeated. It was just resting. And I, Evelyn Reed, the neurologist, the rationalist, I was now a part of it. A gateway, a host, a living, breathing echo of the call. Humanity lived under a shadow now, a shadow of a war we could never win. Just a temporary reprieve, just waiting.